Well, hello everyone and welcome to the RPO Leadership Forum. This educational webinar program is brought to you by the Recruitment Process Outsourcing Association. I'm Abourahma, CEO of the RPOA and host of this program. It's a milestone year for the RPOA as we celebrate 20 incredible years. We launched our webinar program back in 2012, exploring a variety of topics in RPO and talent acquisition and featuring many insightful speakers along the way. Today, we are listening to a very relevant and hot subject in talent acquisition, employer branding. I'm thrilled to introduce our speaker, Elaine Nicol, who is joining us for the first time on this program. She serves as the Senior Director of RPO Customer Experience at AgileOn RPO. And AgileOn is a valued gold member of the RPOA, and Andrea Barr is RPO Executive Vice President at AgileOn and serves on the RPOA Advisory Board. We truly appreciate their thought leadership and contributions to our association and the wider industry. On a personal note, Elaine is widely respected by her peers, though you might not hear her say that. I had the pleasure of meeting Elaine last year in New Orleans for an event, and I was genuinely impressed by her warmth, kindness, and deep expertise in her field. So it's truly an honor to have her with us today. And now to get on with the webinar, the reason you're here today, I'd like to warmly welcome Elaine to present today's topic. So welcome, Elaine.
Great. Thank you, Lamise, and thank you for such a warm welcome. Welcome everybody who's here today. And thank you for joining today's session. I'm really excited to be partnering with the RPOA today to discuss a topic that's near and dear to me, and the importance of having a magnetic employer brand, as Lamise said, is becoming more and more important in talent acquisition and for businesses everywhere. Can everybody see the screen as I move forward? So, as Lamise said, I'm Elaine Nicol, and I've spent a very long time, about 25 years, working in the RPO space, partnering with organizations across healthcare, pharma, engineering, oil and gas, finance, manufacturing, and other areas. It's been a long time and across a variety of different organizations. And today we're exploring a topic that's becoming increasingly relevant, as we said earlier, across all of these industries. The one thing they have in common is how important employer brand is. When we look at employer brand in today's competitive talent market, having a strong employer brand isn't just a nice to have, it's essential for attracting and retaining the right talent. So today we'll explore a comprehensive framework for assessing and strengthening your employer brand to make it truly magnetic to your top talent. We'll take a thorough and structured approach to employer branding that covers all the essentials and all the elements that are required. We'll provide you with some practical tools nearing the end of this and insights that you can implement immediately. Our framework at AgileOn examines 8 critical dimensions that contribute to a magnetic employer brand, and we'll be covering off on those today. So today our webinar objectives, what is an employer brand and why it matters. We'll talk about that employer brand assessment framework and the 8 critical dimensions that we use to analyze. We'll talk about the employer branding maturity model and the roadmap for moving along that model. We'll talk about what can you do to make sure that you have some action items and put some things into play right away. And then we'll talk about some key takeaways as well as some question and answer. So 2 quick housekeeping notes. I discovered during this process that I need a big screen now to see my presentations. When I look here, the printing is too small for me to see what's actually on the PowerPoint slides. So forgive the side of my face, and I apologize for that. I wish it was my best side. And having said that, I also can't see everybody who's on today, nor the chat. So I'm going to ask Lamise to watch the chat for me and do her best to interrupt me if you have any questions. So let's not wait till the end for Q&A. let's just ask questions as we go along. So before we dive into why magnetic employer branding is important, let's establish what we mean by employer branding. So at its core, employer branding is about positioning your organization as an attractive place to work for the talent you want to attract and keep. Not all talent, the talent that you're looking for. It's not just about having a good reputation, although that certainly matters. It's about actively shaping how current and potential employees, and I want to start again, current employees as well as potential employees perceive your organization as an employer. This includes everything from your workplace culture, your values, to the actual experience of working for your company. The key components of a magnetic employer brand include your organization's reputation as an employer, the experience you provide to employees as well as candidates, how you communicate your workplace culture and value, and what is your unique employee value proposition or EVP. So why does it matter? If you look at some of the data here, it's really compelling. Organizations with strong employer brands see measurable business results. And I think from an HR and talent acquisition perspective, measurable business results are key for us to be able to bring to the table. The Harvard Business Review found that companies with strong, positive cultures experienced a 4 times revenue growth. That's a really cool number, and it's a business impact. So this isn't just about HR, it's about really positive business performance. When candidates have positive experiences, they become brand advocates, doubling referral potential, another tie directly back to bottom line results. And while employer brand has always impacted consumer brand, even 25 years ago, employment brand impacted consumer brand and consumer brand impacted employer brand. Now more than ever, the impact is immediate and wide reaching. You just have to turn on the news, go onto social media and see a great experience and how it's multiplied out in the world, and a less than great experience and how that multiplies out in the world. So these are the 8 dimensions that form the foundation of our assessment framework. We start with the company culture and values, your EVP, the candidate experience, employee engagement and satisfaction, the employer reputation, internal communication strategies, employer branding strategies, and our client's social media footprint. So each dimension is interconnected and it contributes to the overall magnetism of your employer brand. We're going to examine each one in detail, providing you with some specific information about that dimension, as well as what are some growth drivers and metrics that you can track for your progress. I feel like I should keep stopping and saying, anyone have any questions? But I'll wait till we hear some more about the chat. So as we move through these next slides, I know they're a bit wordy or busy, but we really wanted to provide enough context and detail for anyone that's watching this presentation right now to turn it into an action workbook. So let's dive into dimension 1, which is your company culture and is the foundation for your employer brand. It's not enough to have the values on the wall. I mean, we've all been there where you walk into an organization and they have their mission, vision, and values on the wall, but they don't live those mission, vision, and values. There's got to be a consistency between what you say and what you do. You've got to walk the talk. This dimension encompasses everything from how you recognize employees to how you support work-life balance. So the key growth drivers, and there are many in each one of these dimensions, but we pulled out here the key growth drivers listed here. There aren't just suggestions. These are actual proven data-driven elements that will contribute to cultural strength. If you look at some of the numbers here, according to Glassdoor, 77% of job seekers consider a company's culture before they even apply. They don't apply and then learn about it. They'll do the research before they decide whether or not to apply. When you look at dimension 2, or your EVP, this is what sets you apart from your competitors. It's the unique combination of offerings that make talented people want to work for you. It's not what your competitors are doing. It's not what you want to be. It's who you are and what's unique about you. And it's this unique combination of offerings that make people talk about you, and then get interested in your jobs. So while compensation, you can see the number there, while compensation remains important, 68% of employees consider salary and benefits still one of the most important aspects of their EVP. Today's candidates also value flexibility. That can be where they work, the hours they work, growth opportunities that can be lateral as well as vertical moves inside the organization, ongoing education and learning and development. The key is creating a compelling package that aligns with your organizational values and who you are. As we move into dimension 3, the candidate experience. The candidate experience is your first impression and often your last impression or last chance to make a really good impression. With 60% of candidates reporting poor experiences, there's a significant opportunity to differentiate yourself in how you handle your candidates. Remember, even candidates you don't hire can still be really great brand advocates or detractors based on their experience with your process. You know, some additional information that as I was reviewing this over the last few days, candidates are 38% more likely to accept job offers with positive branding that comes from the talent board. It's really important to have a great candidate experience. When you look at dimension 4, this reminds us that engaged employees are your best brand ambassadors. Gallup's research shows that highly engaged teams experience a 21% higher profitability. Again, tying HR and talent acquisition back to hard numbers on P&Ls. That's a huge number, 21%. There's also a direct correlation between employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction. Again, something that drives bottom line results. Happy employees deal differently with customers, right? So they create a better customer experience. When employees are engaged, they naturally become advocates for your brand, and that attracts other people to your organization. It's one of the reasons why employer referral programs should be a strategic part of your talent acquisition strategy. For dimension 5, guess what? Your reputation precedes you in the talent market. Lanise and I were just talking about all of this before you got on the call. That statistic that 72% of professionals won't apply to companies with bad reputations, even when they're unemployed. So someone unemployed, 72% of them are less likely to apply for a job when you have a bad reputation in the market, right? It shows just how critical this dimension is. Interestingly, though, people trust average employees more than CEOs, which emphasizes the importance of authentic employee voices when you go out to build your reputation. It's all well and good to have our CEO says, our senior vice president says. What gets more cachet and more believability in the marketplace is for your employees to be out there saying those things. When you think about dimension 6, internal communication, this is a key piece. I love change management and communication. Communication is like the nervous system of your organization. Companies with effective communication strategies are 4.5 times more likely to report high engagement levels. Well-informed employees are 2.2 times more likely to be engaged. This dimension, it's often overlooked. We think about, well, people are here, we don't need to communicate with them. In fact, this is the place to start. Communicate with your internal employees. Little things, big things, keep them engaged, keep them understanding what's going on. Talk about internal employee movement, education, new products, new lines that are coming on board. This dimension is probably one of the foundations to creating a magnetic employer brand. Your employer branding strategies is dimension 7, and it's how you actively promote your organization as an employer of choice. So you have this great employee group. People are happy. You have a fantastic culture. If you don't have a strategy for how you communicate that both internally and externally, it won't get out into the marketplace. So when you think about how you promote your organization as an employer of choice, you need to think about how this goes beyond passive reputation management to actively brand building. The fact that 38% of candidates are more likely to accept offers when they have a positive perception of your employer brand shows, again, another direct ROI for talent acquisition and your employer brand to the bottom line. And the final dimension is the social media footprint, and it ties back to your employer branding strategies. Social media is where your employer brand lives and breathes in the digital age. Have my phone here right now, stay connected all the time. And even someone like me is on social media watching what's going on. So this is where you really need to make a connection. With 79% of job seekers using social media to research companies, your social presence is often the first impression a candidate has of your organization. And it ties back to that, what we were saying earlier about your employer brand impacts your consumer brand. Your consumer brand impacts your employer brand. We're all on our phones. What am I going to buy? Where do I want to work? What did this company do? It's all interconnected and they tie together. So when you think about companies with strong social media presence are 58% more likely to attract top talent. So when you look at your employer branding strategy and that social media footprint, you cannot be quiet about it. You can't just go, well, we're out in the marketplace, but we don't do anything. You need to own it, create a strategy, and be active so that you're managing your own social media footprint. So where does all of this lead us? We talked about the 8 dimensions, and now I want to tie us a little bit to not all organizations are at the same stage of employer branding maturity. There are different levels to where people are in this model. This picture, I'm hoping, will help you understand where you are and what the next step should be. Most organizations start at that step 1 foundational level with some basic understanding and sporadic efforts. But the goal is to progress through each stage systematically, with some of the best-in-class organizations having distinct brands, employee-centric cultures, they're managing their social media, they treat their employees well, so they're out there as advocates. I do want to walk through this model a little bit so you can start to think about where your company might be, and they might be between some of these steps. So step 1 is foundational. So here's how you read this, by the way. The arrow going down gives you a definition of foundational, and then up above gives you some high-level highlights of what that would be. So foundational, there's some basic understanding of employer branding, limited or ad hoc efforts around managing that brand, and maybe they're in early stages of their EVP modeling. Step 2 is emerging. There's some strategic awareness, maybe some understanding that this is important. They are looking at their EVP development, and there's some more consistent messaging out in the marketplace. As we move to step 3, we've become a developing organization around our employer branding. We have EVP and we're communicating it. We're improving the candidate experience and tying that into our bottom line results. And we have some basic employee advocacy, which can include things like on your career site, having some videos or some quotes from your employees from different areas. So that's that developing stage. As we get to step 4 and we get more advanced, we're data driven now. We're looking at what we're doing and we're measuring results. We're integrating our employee engagement in our external and internal messaging to our external audiences. And we have a really comprehensive employee value proposition. As we move to step 5, we're best in class. We're an employer brand that's differentiated in the marketplace. We're not the same as anyone else. We have a really employee-centric culture, and we have robust employee advocacy internally and externally. We've created and have launched a dynamic employer referral program. Our employees are out there on social media, adding their own thoughts, liking posts, and those kinds of things. And finally, when we get to step 6, that's where you have real strategic alignment. You're fully aligned with the business strategy. We know a new product is going to launch. We have our teams engaged for all of that. We're not considered an adjunct onto the business. We are part of that business. And here's the kicker. You don't stop there. There's a little arrow at the top for a reason. We're in continuous improvement mode. Anybody who's lived for the last 6 months knows that there's always something happening with technology, with what's happening in the world. So you need to be looking at what's coming next? How can we improve? What's happened with our EVP? Is there another thing that we need to get out there and engage in the marketplace? So this is the employer branding maturity model that we use to determine where our customers, where our client partners, where companies fall on this continuum. So as this deck goes out, you can take some time to look at some of the definitions and see where you land. Somewhere between step 2 and 3, somewhere between step 1. Are you actually a strategic alignment? Don't get comfortable. Start thinking about how you can do some continuous improvement. So now we're going to get into building a magnetic employer brand. What are some of the things you can do? So we've given you that framework in a map to see what are the 8 dimensions, where do you fall on that maturity model. Now let's talk a little bit about what some of the things are that you can do. I'd like to share, to start, an example of an assessment that we've used, and then I'm going to talk you through how to create your own. Everything around employer branding and creating a magnetic brand starts with a plan, and you can't create an action plan until you know where you are in the maturity model. So what are you doing well? Where do you need some improvement? Where could you use some help? So this is just that example of how we assess organizations across what we consider the 4 key branding dimensions: employer brand strategy, employer brand alignment, employer brand communication, and then employer brand execution. And then we give a score where we think someone is, and we show a report card, and that helps us drive what we need to work on. So in this case, you can see that for this organization, execution is strong at 4.2, but communication is a significant weakness at 1.6. And so this type of analysis, and you may not want to use numbers, we're going to talk through some questions that you can ask about where you are, but it does help you focus on what you need to do from an action planning to create a magnetic employer brand. So let's look at these 4 areas one at a time. So when you look at how do you actually assess your company, how are you doing? Where do you fall on that employer branding maturity model? Anyone who's worked with me before knows it always starts by you ask some questions. And I put this on here on purpose. Ask yourself, but don't forget, you don't have to do this alone. When you look at assessing what your employer branding looks like now, create a team. It could be an internal team. It could be business operations. It could include IT, anyone in your organization, because one of the things we talked about is that employer branding, your employee advocates are one of the strongest sources of determining your EVP and getting that message out there. So think about who could be on your team to help you answer some of these questions. So when you look at the strategy and the focus on strategy, right now, this slide is actually covering two elements of the assessment. Remember, though, that if you don't have a clear EVP, it's really hard to make the rest of the other efforts work. So when you start with strategy, the first question, do we have a clearly defined employer value proposition? And if the answer is no, stop there and work on that. If the answer is yes, then start asking yourself and your teammates the rest of these questions. When you look at the alignment and how we focus on alignment and assessment, this is often for our client partners where the biggest gap exists. A lot of organizations may have great strategies on paper, but in the day-to-day employee experience, it doesn't actually match the promise. As I said earlier, you walk in and you see the mission, vision, values on the wall, but they don't connect to what people are living and breathing every day. So we need to make sure that there's a connection, right? The employee brand, if it doesn't, will lack credibility and it will fall apart both internally and externally. And you really do only have one chance to create a great first impression. You can always mend some things as you move forward, but it definitely loses its appeal, and it's a lot harder to start 4 steps back than with something clean and neat to begin. Strategy and alignment are on this slide together because they're really interconnected. You can't have effective alignment without that clear strategy, and your strategy is completely meaningless without proper alignment to execution. how you're actually going to deliver on it. As we move through the next two areas, communication focus, authenticity is key here. You aren't anybody else, right? So many organizations actually struggle with generic messaging that doesn't differentiate them. Oh, we really care about our employees. We're number one in this. There may be some truth to that, but it's super generic. So one way to work on this is to emphasize the importance of your employee stories. What's happening with your employees, and make your current employees effective ambassadors. They're the most credible voice. Remember, people listen to employees over CEOs, and that helps them make that decision. They're the most credible voice for your employer brand. Start by asking questions. Are our employer brand messages clear, compelling, and differentiated? Do we have authentic employee stories that bring our EVP to life? Ask those questions. If the answer is no, follow the 5 whys. Well, why is that? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? In organizational development, the science shows that by the time you get to the 5th why, you'll be at the core of the challenge, and it will allow you to fix it. When we look at the execution focus, this is where, for me, the rubber meets the road. You've done all the hard work now. Now you need to execute on that. The candidate experience is often the first real test. It's a really great way to see if your employer brand is just marketing, gimmicky words, or if it's a reality. So think about your candidate experience. A consistent delivery across all locations and functions is a common challenge for larger organizations. Even in talent acquisition, job descriptions don't match. How we're posting job ads is different. There isn't a consistent message. And it's very easy to start with your career site, your job descriptions, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But you need to make sure the execution is happening. I think some of the key points for all of these 4 dimensions is that, well, like any action plan, I guess, measurement is critical for continuous improvement. Without regular monitoring, feedback loops, checking with people, how are we doing? You can't really identify any gaps where things might not be working well. You can't emphasize where things are working well, and you want to get more of them out there. And you can't really identify if there's a challenge between what we promised and what we're delivering. Accountability structures ensure sustained focus and improvement. I actually wrote that down because I'm someone who needs accountability structures. Ask my team. I have checklists and all of those things because it's great to have an idea. It's even great to put together a plan. And you can communicate it, but if you don't execute and hold yourself and others accountable, then it doesn't give you the results that you're looking for. So here are some quick wins, actions we wanted to put together for you. Minimizing unconscious bias. So unconscious bias can really significantly impact your employer brand's attractiveness or magnetism. These biases or biases, depending upon where you are, can unintentionally exclude qualified candidates and limit your talent pool. The one that gets me every time, and I think I get the numbers wrong every time I share this with a client, but if you look at that bottom left blue box, studies show that women tend to apply for jobs when they meet 100% of the listed qualifications, while men are more likely to apply when they meet only 60% of those qualifications. We're cutting out a whole group of people. So the language you choose has unintended consequences on the diversity, the outreach of the work that you're doing. So when you look at some common types of bias, there's generational bias. Terms like digital natives or experienced professionals may unintentionally favor certain age groups. Educational bias is the one I lean into heavily. Requiring degrees unnecessarily, okay, can really exclude candidates. You want to hire people for skills. Someone may have 20 years of experience and not a degree. Do you really want to hire someone just out of school without experience? So these are things to think about. Cultural bias. Idioms like hit the ground running may alienate candidates unfamiliar with certain phrases. I think maybe you can't tell anymore. My family always jokes with me. There's a couple of us Canadians on the call. Hi, Lanise, we're here. There are some phrases that don't translate culturally, right? Or people don't understand how to take them. So be very careful about your cultural bias. Gender bias, words like assertive or competitive may be gender coded and could discourage some applicants. Bottom line, be intentional with the language to promote inclusivity and attract a wide world of talent. Some other areas to watch. Think about images now, implicit bias in your imagery. Look at your career site. Maybe you post job ads with pictures. Make sure you're using photos that that aren't focusing on one gender, age, race, any unintentional preferences. If it's a manufacturing job, do you have someone sitting at a desk? These are little things that have a big impact. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Avoidable requirements. We sort of talked about that with degrees. Don't overstate experience or unnecessary skills. A leadership bias. Make sure you're looking for phrases like, effective leadership versus strong or assertive leadership. Ability bias. Use things like must lift 30 pounds regularly rather than something a little vague like must be able to lift, right? Focus on the tasks, not the traits. And again, we talked a wee bit about language bias. Use fluency in English rather than native speakers to avoid excluding multilingual candidates. There are several people, myself included, when they tell me about native speaking French, I immediately say, je ne peux parler en français. I'm not a native speaker. I don't think I speak French that well. Maybe the job, I have the right level of French speaking abilities for that job. So think about fluency in English. So inclusive job language helps attract a broader, again, more diverse, farther reaching talent pool. So let's think about this right now. Where could you use these thoughts and ideas immediately when you go back to your work? I don't know if there's enough people to jump in the chat. Where could you think about minimizing unconscious bias from a talent acquisition perspective? I don't know if I can see the chat. I closed it. Anybody? Any ideas?
We have a quiet audience, Elaine.
Okay, here I go. Job descriptions. It's right in the title here, you guys. Job ads, interview guides, career sites, your social media posts, and on and on and on and on. Just think about where you could have some impact, thinking about minimizing your unconscious bias. Sort of tied to that, let's think specifically about what you can do with your job descriptions. Often they're the first touch point for candidates with your employer brand, right? So following these strategies here will help make sure that your job descriptions are inclusive, readable, and effective. The goals of gender neutral language, appropriate word count. Don't be me and put 1,000 words before you get to the meat of what you want from people. It'll help maximize your reach to qualified candidates. Think about job title and summary, essential responsibilities. What are the actual qualifications? And more important than some job descriptions, get that company culture in there, right? This is your chance. This is, for a lot of candidates, their real first experience doing a deep dive in you. Think about this, though. This seems like a lot of work, but there are several tools that can help you with this, including OnGig. You can use some secure AI. Make sure you're secure in every tool that you're using, like ChatGPT, my favorite Claude. I know we're not getting a lot of engagement right now, but if anyone else wants to drop in the chat, I know at our organization, we actually have an AI champions group where we're testing out and trying a variety of new tools. If you guys don't mind adding some more to the chat, you don't have to do this on your own. There are ways to take your thoughts and ideas and spend a little time making sure that your job descriptions are optimized.
Elaine,
Yeah.
Erica mentioned perplexity. I guess that's one of her.
Yes, perplexity is one that our team uses quite a bit. And thanks for adding that, Erica. I wanted to touch a little bit about social media strategy. That's another way to get a magnetic employer brand out in the marketplace. All social media sites are not the same. Each social media platform requires a tailored approach while maintaining consistent messaging. So if you look here from left to right, LinkedIn is ideal for thought leadership and professional content, while Facebook allows for more engaging personal content. Glassdoor, the bane of some people's existence, should never be ignored, okay? Focuses on authentic employee experiences and indeed prioritizes job-specific information. So when you're looking at what you're posting, customize the content to the right site, okay? Make sure it's meeting what the site is designed to do. Here's just a list of some best practices that you can cross all social media platforms, changing the language a little bit to be appropriate. So, and everything you need to be authentic. So when you're looking, bring in your company culture, right? Look at your EVP and look at your brand messaging. Make sure you're aligned across LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Facebook, and Indeed, aligned, but the language and how you approach it is different, okay? A consistent, authentic presence helps attract candidates who align with your mission and creates that consistent experience from start to ongoing retention. Ensure that the presence across platform reflects a unified, engaging, and authentic employer identity. Some key areas to focus on: employee testimonials. If you leave here today with one thing, employee messaging, employer brand, employees as your brand ambassadors is really important. Share real stories, humanize your organization. Think visually what you're putting out there. Think of that candidate experience. Get your employees out there sharing and engaging, creating a glass door campaign. Don't tell your employees what to say. Just make sure that people are going out there sharing their authentic experience, and make sure that you're consistently acknowledging and engaging with reviews. This is that, oh yeah, we know they're out there attitude will not help you create a magnetic employer brand. Feedback response, have somebody responsible for all of those sites or individual sites responding to things. Don't let a comment go on Glassdoor. Don't let another comment go on LinkedIn. You need to actively engage on those social media sites. So, what are some of the key takeaways to building your magnetic brand? You are not alone. Ask for help is a different color for a reason. So whether it's your internal team, whether you belong to the RPOA group like we do here, and you can reach out to some of your friendly competitors for some help, you are not alone. Do you have an internal team, other colleagues who do talent acquisition? Ask for help. In fact, the more voices, the more comprehensive and the better your results will be. Take the time to assess your current state. Look at the maturity model, look at the 8 different dimensions, ask a variety of people the questions that are listed out, give them a scale of 1 to 5, take the numbers and their comments, and really assess where you are. Then create a plan. The next 5 bullet points are bolded for a reason. Make sure you're always using a data-driven approach. Use metrics to guide your decisions. This actually helps at the C level as well as to operations, and helps get HR and talent acquisition tying back to the business needs and goals. Consistency is key. Align all touch points with your brand messages. Employee experience first. Engaged employees create magnetic brands. Continuous improvement. I don't care if you're doing incredibly well. Don't rest on your laurels. Don't stop there. Employer branding is an ongoing journey, right? As your EVP evolves, as you grow into different areas, you need to be looking at how you can continuously improve. Authentic storytelling. Let your employee voices drive your narrative. Don't force fit or create for them. People who've worked with me before, don't boil the ocean. Don't look at this and go, oh my gosh, it's too big for me to do anything. Take the time to assess, create a plan, and choose 1 or 2 things that you can do right away. Job description optimization, job ad optimization, making sure you're taking care of your unconscious biases in these areas. Look at your career site, do the same thing there, right? Use the tools available. AI is your friend. At AgileOn, we talk about supercharging the human, right? We're never going to take our human ability out of the way, but we can provide some tools that can make life easier, that can help get rid of unconscious biases, that can help us get that brand out there more effectively. So use the tools that are available for you. Did I leave any time for questions? Thanks for listening to me today. I really appreciate it. I'd love to hear your questions, discuss how this framework might apply to your specific situation. I do want everyone to remember that every organization is different and unique. No one size fits all, and the key is to adapting these principles to fit your culture and values. If you're interested in conducting a comprehensive assessment, happy to schedule a follow-up. I'm also just available to chat, brainstorm. Lamise and I just had a really great conversation that's driving this more forward for me just before everyone else got on the call. So sometimes just talking it through, I'm happy to be part of that team. You are not alone if you need any help. Any questions?
Fantastic. Well, well, thank you, Elaine. And we are taking questions if anybody has them, but I always have questions for my guests. So buckle up,
I know
Elaine.
I'm a little afraid right now.
No, that should be fun. You should not be afraid. You covered a lot of grounds, and this is kind of baked into your presentation, but curious about employers who hire globally.
Yeah,
How does
it's
employer branding?
yeah. That's where, I mean, if you're a global organization, you do need to look at yourself as a global organization. Everything needs to connect. You can't be one separate company here, one separate company here. You're a global organization. But employer branding is equally important, whether you're looking at a region like EMEA, you're looking at individual countries in EMEA, whether you're looking at APAC or LATAM or South America, however your company defines those regions, by the way. Employer branding is really important. Making sure country by country, culture by culture, language by language, you're using the right language. Your job descriptions, you may need to think about them a little bit. Number one, they should be in the language that you need people to work in. You may need to think about how the unconscious bias is a little different culture by culture. What different words mean in different languages, they don't always translate well. So you need to be really careful about taking what you might be using in an English-centric country and how you translate that culture by culture. But the employer brand and creating a magnetic employer brand, the principles are the same country by
Yeah.
country.
So the way I see this, Elaine, it's like the guidebook that you shared with us, or playbook, whatever you called it, that you probably creating this, just like you said, for different regions, for different
Yep,
countries. And
yep,
so
for sure.
it's same work multiplied by, it's a lot more.
Overarching organization, and then you're absolutely right. This work needs to translate, right? Literally and figuratively across the globe.
Yeah, it seems simple. It's conceptually it's it's straightforward, simple, but I can see execution being a big overtaking.
Yeah, yeah.
Related to this, so a lot of what you provide, and I really appreciate you just going deeper into this employer branding and really providing actionable, lots of action and lots of takeaways for primarily it's the TA audience, the employers. So they can take this and apply it internally. But for organizations, and as an RPO association, I have to ask this for my guests. How does an RPO help an employer with an employer branding?
I love that you asked that. I can't speak for all RPO organizations, but I worked for a bunch over the last 25 years. And one of the things that I think is incredibly important for all of our client partnerships is to understand your culture, your EVP, what are the selling propositions, all of those things, because that's how we go out and market you. So we start during the business development cycle talking about, in our case, our brand boost program, which includes all of these elements that we think are important for our client partners. And over the life of our partnership, some of this work takes some time. We'll work on all of these elements. We'll build them into our sourcing strategies. We build them into all of our drip campaigns, but understanding at the very least who you are as an organization and the EVP, one of the immediate things an RPO firm can help their client partners with are those job description optimization exercises, job ad optimization, gender bias, unconscious biases, optimizing them in a way that makes you the most attractive and sticky for the people you want to work at your organization, not for the world, but for the right talent that fits your culture.
Yeah, fantastic. And you touch on also something relevant to what you said, and thinking of the employer branding maturity model. That takes a lot of work. What's a realistic time expectations for
Great question.
like
When we
this?
first start, and we're doing one right now, so the timing is quite interesting. It depends on the size of the organization, honestly, because it depends on the number of participants who give you feedback on where you are now. So if it's a smaller organization and we're getting a cross section of 40 people, and then we have to do the work, and then we put the plan in place, that's an 8 to 12 week exercise. The larger you get, the more multinational you get. We'll do something overarching, but then we need to go country by country or region by region to make that happen. But I think 8 to 12 weeks to create the plan. And I think the most important thing here is we measure what's working, what's not working. We optimize. And it's not to go from step 1 with our clients to step 8. It's how do we move from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. So we don't create a 5-year plan. It's how do we move on each one of those steps. But typically it's about an 8 to 12 week to
To
do all.
create the plan?
Yeah.
So I have an audience question, and we started talking about how RPOs support employers with employer branding. What can you tell us about how demand for employer branding from RPOs change over the last few years?
Oh, I can go almost back to day one. One of my very first business development opportunities. There were a couple of us in the room, and I've been saying this for a very long time. Lots of people have. Your consumer brand impacts your employer brand. Your employer brand impacts your consumer brand. We've been saying that for 25 years. But people are like, yeah, it doesn't really. Okay. It always did. Okay. Now, the biggest change over the last year to 2 years, it's just exploded, is now everybody's making that connection. Okay. Somebody has a bad recruitment experience. They're on their phone. They're on Blue Sky, they're on Instagram, they share with all of their Facebook friends. This was the worst experience I've ever had from a recruiting perspective. Company X doesn't care about people, right? And then it goes out and it goes out and it goes out, and people are like, maybe I don't want to buy their product then if they don't treat people well. Conversely, you have a bad experience with a product, and again, people are right on their phones doing whatever they need to do, and suddenly it gets out there, and I'm somebody thinking about looking for a job, and I go to my handy little Google search engine, and it comes up, oh, what an awful company they are. They don't treat their customers well. So I think in the last maybe even 18 months, it's exploded, and I think business leaders now are finally making the connection that they are so intertwined. It's been a big change.
Yeah, and I can speak also from a data perspective, because the RPOA has been researching the buyer trends, if you will, in the RPO market for the last 3 years. And I can say recruitment marketing has been, and relevant, obviously, to recruitment marketing is employer branding, EVP, and so forth.
Yes.
It's been top 3
Yep.
services expected and requested by RPO buyers or the employer for the last 3 years. And looking currently, I was on LinkedIn to see what is hot in talent acquisition just this weekend. It's like employer branding. Probably the thing that stood out, just it's employer branding. And Elaine, I don't know what's your thoughts about that, but for me, I'm thinking technology has a lot to do with that. So
Yes, it really does. Yeah, I think, well, the ease of finding things now, if you really wanted to look into an employer, yeah, we had the internet. I'm not that old, my friends. But it was a lot harder to find out things. It was easier for, gosh, I'm trying to find a positive way to say this. It was easier for organizations to only show positive things and the negative things were a lot harder to find. So I think technology, again, you don't even have to sit at your desk. I mentioned this, you could be on your phone. You could be, sitting on an airplane or, just kicking back in your backyard or something and doing a little research. You don't even need to look anymore. Stuff will pop up on your phone and give you this information. So I think technology, the different applications, how has just made it that much easier. And I'm not surprised, Lemise, it's in the top three. It should have always been, in my estimation, because I'm so passionate about it. But now people are making the connections, and technology, the ease with which we can share negative experiences is probably why it's become more important to people versus the positive experience is definitely one of the driving forces behind it.
Yeah, and I want to take it also in another direction, Elaine, with technology, and obviously AI is
Mm-hmm.
embedded in technology. Technology is also creating more of a, in some cases, unauthentic employer brand for the
Mm-hmm.
employers because the way
Mm-hmm.
it's being used, and research is showing that the recent TA trends report from Lighthouse shows that 83% don't believe the employer brand of
Yep.
candidates, think it's not authentic, and they don't trust the employer brand. And that's very alarming. And I think technology and AI specifically has a lot to do with that.
I think so too. And I think it ties back to, and sorry, I don't have the number here in front of me right now. It ties back to what we just said. Candidates trust what the employees are saying
Mm-hmm.
far more than what the CEO is saying. And I think that's why when you see here, let your employees lead the stories. Look, I could go on to any tool right now, give it the parameters of a company. I could choose any company, by the way, and say, hey, create an EVP. And by the way, they'll do a nice EVP. Will it actually be? Now, big companies are so well known out on the world. Might not do a bad job, but if you're doing it from the outside in, it's not as authentic. And I think that people, your point, they don't trust those brands because they're not real, right? Because they're not real. They are distrusting because we're all like, oh, come on, that's AI, right? So that's why letting your employees lead the EVP, get your stories to be real, let them be your real brand ambassadors, create a robust employee referral program. Go onto your career site. Don't just say things. Have me on videotape. Nobody wants me on videotape talking about my job and why I love it here. Have a variety of people. Change it frequently. Watch your Glassdoor reviews. Make sure it's real, authentic employees who are going on there and sharing their stories. Here's what I love about here. You know what I don't like? I need to come into the office 3 days a week. But the job is great. The people are wonderful. It needs to be authentic and it needs to come from your employees. You can't create an EVP and hand it down. And I think that helps people. We were talking before everyone else joined us. I think people are getting smart about that. I think they can tell. That's why we supercharge our recruitment teams. They're not taken over by AI because people still can tell when there's a human in the
Mm-hmm.
mix. Let your humans, your employees, do that development with you. Engage them in this process. It's not a top-down process at all.
Fantastic. And I'm going to close with this question, Elaine, because you did a nice job with your research and it's worth sharing. Tell us some examples of companies that are doing really well with their employer
I
brand.
was telling you that last night and the night before I was making notes on my phone because I was too lazy to walk down the hall and take some notes. So Netflix, and here's some of the notes I took. Open vacation policy, unique work culture. They use employee generated content. Okay, again, to showcase its values and attract like-minded candidates and people. Google's employer branding I can't read my own typing, emphasizes innovation, a supportive work environment, and a strong global presence. That's their EVP. You want to work globally, they're a great place to go. Wegmans. I didn't even know about Wegmans. I had to go on their website. It's a grocery store chain that stands out for career growth opportunities, including language courses. That's why I'm mentioning this one, college scholarships, and cross training. And they share a lot of stories where people say, hey, I was stocking shelves when I was in high school. I couldn't afford college. They paid for everything. And now I'm an area manager, district leader, something like that. Very cool EVP and very wonderful employer brand, very magnetic. Starbucks, Zappos. Well, conversely, I got challenged just before everyone else joined the call about some that are less than, and this might not surprise anyone. Amazon is often criticized for intense work environment, high employee turnover, and a focus on productivity over well-being. So their EVP is negative, okay? Same with Tesla, demanding work schedules and a high pressure environment. So it's pretty easy to go out there and look. I went down the rabbit hole and started to look at all these different websites of these people, and you can feel it when you go to their websites.
Yeah. You know
Yep.
what? I'm gonna add one more because I heard this from I heard it from the CEO of I believe it's not Uber, the other company is Lyft, is it?
Yep.
One of these companies, and what the CEO was saying is he actually goes and take rides like
Yep.
8 hours a month so he can experience it and speaks with the drivers directly. And one of the things that he heard from one of the female drivers is that I can't remember exactly how she put it, but basically they look for areas where they can use restrooms. So like their driving is kind of confined where there's clean bathrooms that she can use. So they started
Wow.
this thing, the app for the drivers to tell each other where to find good bathrooms for
Wow.
to use.
Okay, it sounds little and silly, but it's about a
Uh-huh.
work
Makes a
experience that
difference.
makes your work life that much better. I love the fact we're not talking undercover boss or anything here, but I really do like the fact when people sit in, hey, I haven't done recruiting in a long time. I haven't sat at a desk for a while. Hey,
Mhm.
how do we build this? Anyone who's worked with me over the last 40 years knows I love plant tours and location tours because it helps connect you to the end product, whether it's a hospital setting, whether it's a manufacturing setting, like
You're
all
talking
it
client
connects you.
tours, Elaine, right? Not
Pardon?
client tours, not the
Yes.
vacation tours.
No, client tours. I love when we go and it really connects you. And then when you're going out to help our client partners with their employer brand, we can help them go, you know what? Joe, the guy on the floor that makes the, extruded wire, we need to get him on camera. Guy loves his job, started here right out of school, all of those kinds of things. But it really helps us use the right language to get that employer brand out there from the people who love working there. We hear from some of our client partners, it's like a family. I love it here. And they mean it. They don't
Yes.
care if I say this, they care that they say it. So let's get those words out there, right?
Yeah.
Those
That comes
people.
across when it's spoken from
Yeah.
the heart.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we are at the end of our hour. I enjoyed this thoroughly. I don't want to let you go, Elaine. It's been fun having this conversation.
Well, I
Thank you so
appreciate the
much.
time and that everybody joined on a mid-July heavy vacation, 110 degrees in some places. So thanks everybody for joining and thanks for giving me this opportunity. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, it's my pleasure on behalf of the RPOA, and thank you for everyone who joined. We'll have the recording online on YouTube, and we'll share it with the registrants within 48 hours. Also, there is a lot of upcoming events from the RPOA on our website. So stay connected and stay informed and join the RPOA, the place to go for RPO.
It's true. I echo that 100%. Thank you.